Hello, and welcome to another installment in the Law & Order video series. In this one, we'll be looking at the story behind AdroV Games' latest creation, Uninvited Guest. Coming from the same developer that brought you Coldside, this game was a similar game, and although there were scary moments, the gameplay became quite predictable, with ass-kickings being a regular occurrence. That being said, the story was a bit of a head-scratcher due to limited information given through notes in the game, so I'll do my best to dissect it in this video. There will be spoilers in this one, so you have been warned. Let's roll the intro. It's the 1930s. A man whose name is not known goes into an old mansion in order to steal a valuable painting for someone, who says he will pay him a substantial reward. The man accepts the job as his daughter is sick and urgently needs medicine. However, due to them not having much money, this is unaffordable, which is why he has taken the job. He waves goodbye to his daughter and sets off in the rain, later arriving at the old mansion. Upon entering, it seems that this mansion is extremely run down, its halls thick with plant growth, and the ceilings having caved in with rain pouring into the hallways. Strange statues adorn the hallways and seem to move behind the man's back. Nevertheless, he presses on in search of this painting. The man finds the painting, but is approached by what seems to be a monster wielding a shotgun who shoots at him. He drops the painting and the creature seems to run off with the painting. The man presses on but meets this creature again. He retreats, but the floor gives way and he ends up down in the basement, which is flooded. Making his way through the basement, he comes face to face with something living down there, sleeping. After creeping around it and solving a few puzzles, he bizarrely ends up in what appears to be a different place entirely. He just about sees the same kind of creature which was down in the basement, and beside it, a huge skeleton. Inside a nearby hut, he witnesses time moving very fast. Upon leaving the hut, the man is knocked out and is now back in the mansion. After making his way through the mansion, the man comes across a note explaining that he is nearly at the end of his journey. He comes face to face with a creature who blows a black mist onto him, and the man is seemingly transported to the mansion's exit with the painting in his hand. He runs back home only to find his home is destroyed and now seemingly decades old, with his daughter nowhere to be seen. A helicopter arrives and what seems to be a soldier steps out, and the man is revealed to have turned into one of the creatures. The game then ends. So there it is, a pretty short game with a fairly intriguing storyline. Let's do our best to unpack it and find out what on earth is going on. So, the mansion in this game belonged to the obviously wealthy Winchester family. As far as we know and from what the game tells us, the Winchesters had one son. They were wealthy enough that they had many servants working in their mansion. Judging from notes in the game, it seemed that the derelict mansion still housed many other valuables such as jewellery, and as a result attracted many thieves. It's noted that at some point the servants became concerned about the behaviour of Mr. and Mrs. Winchester. The servants noted that Mrs. Winchester bought a load of statues, which they thought was pretty bizarre. From entering Mr. Winchester's office, it seems that he was very much into the study, or at least the collection of flying insects, with many of the insects being displayed in the office. It may have been that Mr. and Mrs. Winchester were art collectors themselves. Is this why Mrs. Winchester bought the statues? I mean, it's certainly possible. The Winchesters could have both seen them as art. The servants soon seemed to get sick. It appears that a servant called Martin was one of the first, then the other servants followed. Eventually, the Winchester's son got sick and they had him moved to another room and had a doctor look at him, but then the doctor got sick too, but he ended up taking his own life. One servant mentioned a black smoke in the basement. It's possible that this creature was emitting this black smoke, causing the residents of the mansion to become afflicted with a mysterious disease. But what was the disease? Now, I suspect that this is to do with the creature living in the mansion's basement. It was clearly a contagious disease, as the doctor who was instructed to care for the Winchester's son also got sick. So where did the creature come from? During the third chapter in the game, the protagonist ends up in what seems to be a different dimension with two significant things living there. Firstly, a huge skeleton lying on the ground, likely belonging to this species, and a creature walking around which is identical to the creature living in the Winchester's basement. Now, it's clear that the servants and the Winchesters were infected by the black smoke from the creature and turned into the other creatures. It seems a portal has been opened up to another dimension, most likely by the statues. We can see that they move around, so it's definitely plausible that they opened up a portal and the creature from the basement travelled through it. Now, we also see in this other dimension that time is a different construct than on Earth. A clock shows us that time moves very fast. What seems like a minute in real time in this dimension is actually something like days back on Earth. Kind of like Interstellar, and I guess a similar thing happens here. Warping in space-time, if you like. A theory of relativity and all that, but that is a black hole I don't particularly want to disappear down, so I will just leave it there. Either way, the mansion was caught up in this time warp of sorts, and merely entering the mansion would cause years to pass whilst inside. Almost like a bubble. This explains the note from the servant which states that spiders are everywhere despite them having just cleaned up the day before, and it explains why the mansion is so run down. At the end of the game, we see that the protagonist is confronted by a creature. I mean, we don't know whether this is one of the Winchesters, whether it's the son, or whether it's a servant, but my guess is that this is the son. Anyway, our protagonist succumbs to the black smoke, and we see later on that a lot of time has passed since he left home to go to the mansion. This unfortunately means that his daughter likely died from her illness, as we do see her post-credits as what seems to be a ghostly apparition. It's now present day as a helicopter lands and a soldier gets out carrying a gun. But who are these people? So in the previous AdroV Games title Coldside, you are tasked with entering a top secret underground laboratory which studied anomalous phenomena. Now I'm just putting two and two together here, but the soldier at the end of Uninvited Guest is identical to the soldiers in Coldside. I'm pretty sure that the protagonist, who is now a creature, was taken to this laboratory and studied, and it seems that some statues may have been brought back too, as similar statues are encountered in Coldside. Not only that, it seems that the Foundation also brought back the creature from the basement, as in Coldside you encounter this creature, albeit a much smaller version. In Coldside, a man named Oliver mentions that the Foundation wanted to use anomalous creatures from other dimensions in conflict against their enemies. At first, I thought that Mr. Winchester escaped the mansion. The servants noted that he was acting strangely. We discussed that it seems that Mr. Winchester was an art collector himself, and at the start of the game it states that the art collector who approached him was a big art collector from the city. Was Mr. Winchester the man who was asking people to go into the mansion to steal the painting? Did he escape the mansion at some point? They're all plausible points, but what confuses me is this. Why are there so many of the same painting? Mr. Winchester leaves notes for the protagonist at the end of the game stating that he is at the end of his journey but that he has failed and that he is no longer needed. But how is Mr. Winchester leaving notes if he's not in the mansion? Did he pre-prepare them? Or did he set all of this up to offer sacrifices to the creature living in the basement? Or is the art collector just some random art collector who just wants a painting? Due to the fact that not one of them returned, he just kept sending people. But this still doesn't explain the identical paintings on the ground here unless we're looking at a time loop. How many have gone before us? Who the hell knows? I'm not sure if this game is being intentionally ambiguous or whether there are some major plot holes. That's pretty much all I can gather from the notes scattered about the game, and I collected every single one. But that's it for this one. It was a pretty short game. I gave it a 5 out of 10 when I played it. While the story had potential and the level design was fantastic and the twist was cool, I don't really think the notes in the game did the story much justice. The last 20 minutes of the game I feel was ruined because it ended up asking more questions than it answered. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it and subscribe if you aren't already. Leave a comment below on your thoughts, and I will see you in the next one.